Hello and welcome to Chapter 8, Section 2, Factoring by the Greatest Common Factor. Our job this time is going to be to factor each polynomial. Now a polynomial, remember a monomial is one coefficient plus variables. A polynomial is a coefficient and variables plus or minus another coefficient and variables. And that can go on and on however many times you'd like. Now, a factor means we're going to take out what they have in common. And a polynomial is a monomial or a sum of monomials. It can have a monomial can have numbers, it can have variables, it can have exponents, like that. A polynomial has this term and another term, and it can have a bunch of terms. Poly, it doesn't matter. So, for example, we've got 4x squared minus 3x. Now, just looking at this, we know that the numbers don't have any common factors. But we know that where this has an x times an x, this only has one x. The only thing these two have in common are that x. So we're going to factor out this x, and we're going to pull that out and multiply it by whatever's left. Well, 4x is left here, minus, and 3 is left here. So instead of having 4x squared minus 3x, we've taken out the factor that they have in common, and we've got all of these left over. That's our job this time. Let's try another one. 10y cubed plus 20y squared minus 5y. Well, this is 2 times 5, this is 4 times 5, this is 1 times 5. So I'm going to take a 5 out of here for sure. I'm also going to take out 1y. I know I've got 1y in everything, but not more than that. If I take 5y out of this, I have 2 and 2 y's left over, 2y squared, plus I've got a 4 here and 1y left over because I used up one of them. So this is going to be 4y minus, and I'm taking that 5 out, and I took that y out. All I have left is 1. I can't just say 0 because there used to be a term there, and when I go and fix this back, I could say 5y times 2y squared gives me 10y cubed. 5y times 4y gives me 20y squared, and 5y minus 1 is going to give me negative 5y. I've got to have something there to bring that back. So here, I'm done. Let's try another one. Negative 12x minus 8x squared. Well, I know that I can pull a negative 1 out. And this is 4 times 3 times x, and this is 4 times 2 times x times x. I'm going to pull a 4 out and an x out, and that leaves me with 3 here. I took that negative 1 out, so now I've got a positive. Took a 4 out here. I have a 2 and one of my x's left. So this is fully factored. Let me do it the long way in case I've lost anybody. This is 6 times 2, which is 2 times 3. So I've got 2 times 2 times 3 times x times negative 1. Here I've got negative 1 times 4 times 2, which is 2 times 2. So I've got 2 times 2 times 2 times x. I've got a negative 1. I've got 2 2's. And I've got an x. And what's left is 3. And I took that negative out, so now this is plus. And I've got 2 and x left over. I'd like you to give this a shot. Please do check it out, number 1 on the middle of page 552. Push pause here. There are 4 problems to try out, and only one of them is a trick question. Give that a shot. Push pause here. Come back when you're done. So for 1a, 5 times b and 3 times 3 times 3 b's. All I have are the b's in common, so I'm going to pull that b out, and I've got 5 and 9b squared all the way left. 9d squared and negative 8 squared, which is 64, which is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. They have nothing in common, so their common factor is 1. That was your trick question. Next one, C and D, I've got negative 1 times 2 times 3 times 3 and 3y's, negative 1 and 7 and 2y's. I'm going to pull out that negative 1. Doesn't have any numbers in common, but it does have 2y's. If I pull out that negative 1, this ends up being a positive. I've got 18 and 1y left over and a 7 here. Here I've got 3. I've got 3 2's and 4 x's. I've got 2 2's and 3 x's. I've got a negative 1, a 2, and 2 x's. So I've got 1, 2 in common and 2 x's in common. That's 2x squared that I'm going to pull out. And that leaves me with 4x squared plus 2x minus, and there's nothing else in here, so it's just minus 1. How'd you do? Ask questions if you miss one and you don't know why. The next thing we're going to talk about is binomial factors. Binomial, a monomial is an algebraic term that is one term long. It doesn't have any plus or minus anything. Polynomial means many. Binomial means 2. So this specifically has 2 terms. And if you'll notice, these are the common factor. We're going to factor out the common factor. If 7 times this minus 2 times this, we can rewrite this to say 7 minus 2x times x minus 3. Now let me show you something and something that you can understand. What if I had 10 times 4 minus 3 times 4? So you can do this up. You can say 40 minus 12, and you could come up with 28. Or you could say 10 minus 3 times 4. 10 minus 3 is 7 times 4 is 28. We're taking the common factor and then their coefficients, and we're making those a binomial. This term times this term. So I have negative t, oh, and this is a tricky one too. Negative t times t squared plus 4 plus t squared plus 4. This is actually 1 times t squared plus 4. So I'm going to take the terms that they have in common and then their coefficients, and I'm going to group them. I'm going to group these to be negative t plus 1, and then I'm going to take the 2 here times t squared plus 4, and I'm done. Let's try another one. I'm going to take these out, 9x minus 5, and I'm going to take this. Now look at this. Oh my gosh, these are not the same thing. They're almost the same thing, aren't they? The difference between x plus 4 and 4 plus x. Let's think about this. Is 2 plus 3 the same as 3 plus 2? Yes, it is, which means these are the same. They're just written a little bit differently, but they're the same. So it doesn't matter which one we do, and we're going to go ahead and use it. One more. I have this times x plus 2, and I have this times x minus 7. Well, these aren't common factors. And if these aren't common factors, I can't factor them out. Which means the answer to this is cannot be factored. I think that's all of the curveballs they're going to throw at you. So I'm going to ask you to pause here and do checkpoint number 3, and then come back when you're done and we'll check your answers. For 3, we have s plus 6 and s plus 6 and 4s minus 5. So we end up with this answer. For 3b, we have the same factor, and we remember that that means times 1. So we have 7x plus 1 times 2x plus 3. 3c does not have the same factor, so we can't factor it. 3d, we pulled out 5x minus 2 and 5x minus 2. You see how that is? So actually, this answer could be 5x minus 2 squared. But if you just put this, that's fine too. Just, you know, it's one of those things we'll get good at recognizing. Okay? Moving on. The next thing we're doing is called factoring by grouping. We're going to group terms that have common factors, and we're going to factor them out of each group to make them similar. So let's have a look at this big long thing. We are looking for groups, and ideally what we want to do is have the same two things left over, just to give you a clue. So let's just look at these two. This is 4 times 3 and 3 times 3, and there's 2 a's. So if we pulled a 3 out and an a squared, we are left with 4a minus 3. Let's see what that gives us here. We don't have any a's we can factor out, but this is 4 times 5 and this is 3 times 5. So if we pull out the 5, then we're going to get 4a minus 3. And this is a positive number, so we're going to do that. We're going to bring that plus sign right down. And so now look what we have. This is where we used to be. So we get to do one extra step in the beginning. So now we're going to say 3a squared plus 5 times 4a minus 3. Here I have 4 terms, so I'm going to look at the first 2. And this is 9 times 1 and 9 times 2. And this has x squared plus an x, and this has x squared. So I'm going to take out that 9x squared that they have in common. And that leaves me with x plus 2. Let's see about this. I'm going to put that plus sign here. Well, look, I've got an x plus 2. And if I want that to be a factor, I'm going to multiply it by 1. So now I can say 9x squared plus 1 times x plus 2 as my answer. Try check it out, number 4, on page 554. There are 2 problems. Give them a shot, push pause, come back when you're done.